Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. All right, so I guess this is the big one, the one that people have been asking me about, my top 10 dungeon crawls. So I never really wanted to do this list for a number of reasons. Mainly, well, first of all, I'm not an expert in board games at all. Not even close. I know what I like and I like what I like, and that's about it. And any kind of list like this is like super subjective, so I never wanted to come across as trying to be some authority or voice of the hobby or something. This is just my own little personal hobby channel, and so these, I guess you could say, these are like my 10 favorite games, subject to change at any time. And then I like a lot of these games, and this list is very hard to put together, and but I have done it, and I know that it's gonna upset some people. A lot of people aren't going to see their favorite game on this list. I can tell you right now that you won't be seeing Gloomhaven. You won't be seeing Sword and Sorcery. You won't be seeing Hero Quest. So, like, already right there, people are, he doesn't like Gloomhaven. Yeah, but, it is what it is. I mean, this is, Daniel's favorite 10 dungeon crawls as of April 2020. All right. At the end of this year, there could be 3 or 4 new ones on this list. I don't know. I do feel confident, though, that every game on this list is awesome, and I could defend why it's awesome. And I have, there's nothing on this list that I don't think anybody would be like super surprised about. So for this first video is going to be numbers 10 through 6, and then I'll do a follow-up video with the top 5. And this is a dungeon crawl list. So this is not a adventure game list. You're not going to be seeing like Runebound or Talisman or those kinds of games. I'm going to do another list for adventure games. What I tried to use to define a dungeon crawl is mainly something where you are in tight corridors, whether that be in space, in a dungeon, in another setting. I don't want to give too much away, but you are in a tight corridor. You are playing as a character or a group of characters, moving through corridors, crawling as you would, fighting monsters, having random encounters, getting loot, going on quests, on missions, on that kind of thing. So I just wanted to make sure that was clear, so people weren't expecting this to be like a fantasy adventure list or having those be those two lists combined. I wanted to keep those separate. So I think that is all of the introductions. And so let's go ahead and kick things off with number 10. And number 10 is Space Hulk, and I am using the 4th edition here as the example. So Space Hulk is a game that probably one of the first like hobby board games I got into. I owned the 1st edition shortly after it came out. I was in high school, and I've told this story before. We played it all the time after school. I have played 2nd edition a little bit. I don't think I ever played 3rd edition. 4th edition, I'm using that as the example. 1, because it is the copy that I own, and 2, out of what I've played, it is my favorite. Production-wise, Space Hulk 4th edition is the best produced game I've ever seen. The cardboard is thick and chunky. The tiles are embossed and glossy with amazing art. The minis are fantastic. The rule book, Everything about Space Hulk 4th edition screams high quality production. It is, of course, from Games Workshop, originally designed by Richard Hallowell. The 4th edition combines everything I remember loving so much about the 1st and 2nd editions and their expansions. The game is super tense. It is fun. There's a huge sense of drama in this game. When you are playing as the Terminators and you are moving down a corridor and this like row of gene stealers is barreling towards you and you're rolling those dice, and if you don't want your guns to jam, you got to hit those numbers, hit those 6s and avoid those 1s. And it so often a game of Space Hulk erupts into a standing dice roll. And I love that. I don't play it as often as I would like, simply because it is at its very core a 2-player game. And 2-player games are the hardest for me to get to the table. I wish that there was a really well-made, officially licensed, created solo version of Space Hulk, or a co-op version. Maybe one that focused a little more on building characters, on that kind of thing, because at its core, Space Hulk is a 2-player skirmish game. But I would be hard-pressed to come up with a game that better defines a corridor crawl. So, number 10 is Space Hulk, and that 4th edition, 2014. Coming up next, and the game is from 2017, from Themeborn Limited, designed by Alex Crispin and Thomas Pike and James Shelton, and that is Escape the Dark Castle. So Escape the Dark Castle is a card-based dungeon crawl. You are escaping from a castle that is dark. This game doesn't use miniatures. You're not moving around the board. It's more of a kind of choose your own adventure narrative game where you are moving through a deck of cards, trying to escape from a dungeon cell to the outside by moving through a series of challenges and decisions, and ultimately you have to fight a boss before you can escape. So even though you're not like moving a mini around, and it's a little more abstract in the dungeon crawling, thematically it is very much a pure dungeon crawl. And I've played this game dozens of times with all kinds of different people, and it has never fallen flat. Every time I've played this game, everybody I'm playing with, they want to, 1, play it again. 2, they ask me if they can, where they can get it. People ask me to bring it over. It's a quick game. It's super simple. You can explain it by the time you have the cards shuffled and set up on the table. It has never failed to be entertaining, and I can't really ask for anything more in a board game. I mean, it's like a perfect board game because it is always fun. And one of the things I like most about it is the art. The art is so great. I mean, just look at the cover here, black and white with that incredible line art. We need more black and white games. I keep saying that, and I don't think a lot of people who review games like professionally agree. I know, the Dice Tower guys, Tom hated the look of this game, and I think it has some of the best art I've ever seen in a board game. It's stark, it's bold, it's daring. So yeah, Escape the Dark Castle at number 9. Number 8 from 2012, Plaid Hat Games, designed by Jerry Hawthorne, of course, is the now considered a classic, Mice and Mystics. So even though Jerry has further developed his system of adventure book games. You know, he's honed the rules and the mechanisms and the theme throughout his career with, you know, Stuffed Fables and Aftermath and Comanauts. I still feel like Mice and Mystics is... I feel like this is going to be the one that in the future more people are going to still consider a classic, that people are going to return to. There is a simplistic element of Mice and Mystics that just really works. It has it's like a childlike sense of wonder in a box, like something like The Secret of NIMH or a Studio Ghibli movie. And of course, my love for the Beast epic really does inform my love and define, you know, it helps to create my love for Mice and Mystics with books like, you know, Watership Down and Book of the Dun Cow, which if you guys still have not read Book of the Dun Cow, I know I've mentioned it before, please read that book. It's so good. But I love the art and the setting. The autumnal colors are just, there's a warmth to the game that I don't get in a lot of dungeon crawls. There's an inviting quality to it. It can be almost too heavy on like the narrative text before and after each quest, but it doesn't quite cross that line into where you are having to wait too long before you can get into the game. The game can be difficult because of the timer, and the timer does kind of impede on the sense of exploration a little bit, but I don't think it ever feels, it doesn't feel punishing. And it's super inviting to play. I love setting it up. I love the way it looks on the table. And I like that there's a good variety. And speaking of variety, there's even more variety in the Downward Tales expansion. I haven't played through all of that yet, and I really want to get to that soon. So that was number 8, Mice and Mystics. And next up, from 2016, from Fantasy Flight Games, designed by Nikki Valens, one of my favorite designers working today, and a fairly new, exciting voice in game design. And that, of course, is Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition, a brilliantly designed game. Nikki took a cool concept from the 1st edition, but one that was just an absolute bear to set up. I never wanted to play that game after setting it up once or twice because it was far too easy to make one little mistake and throw the whole thing off as the game master. She took all of that fiddliness, all of the cumbersome bookkeeping of the 1st edition, and put everything into an app that works. I love apps in games. I want more dungeon crawls, more adventure games to use an app as a replacement for a game master. I think it works really well, and I think that Mansions of Madness proves that it works really well. I know there's a lot of game players who hate apps. They don't want any digital technology in their board games. I am not one of those. I want things to be the best experience that they can be. And if that means using an app for something, then so be it. And Mansions of Madness is exactly that. I think the integration is perfect. It still feels like a board game. It doesn't feel like you're just playing a video game. What you're doing on the board is still important. The game just helps tell the story. It helps keep track of all the fiddly bits, of all the extra like decks of cards that you would need for everything. It handles all the random stuff. I do wish that Fantasy Flight would stop releasing physical expansions for it, because I've quit buying them. I don't want more tiles. It's becoming cumbersome looking through the tiles when you have to set stuff up on the fly. I wish they would just release digital expansions only. I mean, with this game, it would be so easy for them to just be constantly designing and releasing new little random things that can happen in the different missions. So to keep the surprise going, and they wouldn't even have to tell people. Like, you could just be playing one day, like a mission that you've played 4 or 5 times, and like all of a sudden, like something new happens. That they have the ability to do that. I don't think they're doing that, and I think they're leaving some great design ideas on the table by not introducing weird little things. Like, imagine if you were playing, like the first scenario in Mansions of Madness on, the next Halloween, and they had like a special Halloween event in an update that they pushed through the app where, something new and unique would happen just on, for a week in the game. That would be super cool. I would love that. So I have stopped buying stuff. So I consider Mansions of Madness now, as far as at least in the physical components, I consider it a closed box game for me. But it's always fun. It's easy to teach, super thematic, and surprising. I've introduced this game to hardcore board gamers and people like my wife and the couple that live down the street that we just play casually, and everybody has loved it. It's never fallen flat. And that is the sign of a good game for me. All right, so at number 6, coming in, this is going to be the last game for today's video. If I were ordering this list based on the number of components and expansions, this game would be number 1 with a bullet, number 1, exponentially ahead of number 2, and of course 2014 from Flying Frog Productions, designed by Jason C. Hill, and that is Shadows of Brimstone. And I have one of the expansion boxes here as the box example. I've said this before, but I don't think there is another game that has more stuff than Shadows of Brimstone. Not even... It has dwarfed even Arkham Horror 2nd Edition. There are thousands of cards and chits and minis and tiles and supplemental materials, and just the list of things in this game is it's enormous. It's too much. The game is completely overwhelming if you try to combine it all and play with everything you have at your disposal. I absolutely have to, when I play Secrets or Shadows of Brimstone, I have to create a subset. So I have to spend like a day planning before we play. So that's kind of why it's not higher on the list. It can be a chore to get out and set up and get organized. I even have all of my stuff pretty well organized, and even then it can be really difficult. But there isn't another game on the planet that presents to the players that feeling of anything can happen. When I talked about what I talk about when I talk about dungeon diving, the feeling of exploration, of mystery and crazy unique things around every corner, Shadows of Brimstone offers that in an abundance. I love the Weird West theme and the Weird East theme. I think both of those themes are incredibly undervalued by genre fans. I am going to do a video on my favorite Weird West stories and books in conjunction with Shadows of Brimstone, and probably some Weird East stuff. There are people who I know who like hate Westerns, which is it's really weird to me how you could hate a Western. And then there's also people that don't like, Asian things. So sometimes those two, like this game is very much those two things combined. And in the film genre, those two things are often combined. I mean, the samurai and the cowboy are different sides to the same coin. The mythologies overlap in huge ways, and people who made Easterns and Westerns, they influenced each other like very frequently. And add on top of that the Cthulhu, the weirdness, the now with Forbidden Fortress, the Eastern weird mythology with like the yokai and all that kind of stuff. It's a game thematically tailor-made for me. I wish there was a little more variety in the missions, but that is easily a solvable problem just with some house rules and designing your own. Like I've designed whole little mini campaigns that we've played before where we've had to go on quests and stuff with a nice little story. It's got things that happen outside of the dungeons, a town expansion, a town phase where you get to travel and have weird encounters. It's got a ton of stuff for upgrading your character. If it was just easier to get to the table, it would definitely be higher on the list. So let's do a recap. Numbers 10 through 6. We've got 10 with Space Hulk 4th Edition, 9 with Escape the Dark Castle, 8 with Mice and Mystics, 7 with Mansions of Madness, and 6 with Shadows of Brimstone. I will be back in a couple of days or so to do the top 5, so stay tuned for that. Post your guesses. I bet most people can probably get at least... most people could probably guess at least 2 games in my top 5. So, all right, guys, we'll talk to you later. I hope you enjoyed this video and have a good one. Bye-bye.